This video is to go through the notes on how to balance equations. So let's get started. First, let's look at what is an equation. And an equation is what we look at when we see what is before and after a reaction. The before, we call these reactants. They react together to make something else, and what they make are products. So we have reactants on the left and products on the right. This whole process is called a chemical equation, and these we're using formulas to show what is present on each side of the reaction. So here are some examples. If we take a carbon source and we react it with oxygen, we can make CO2, and this is what happens when we burn charcoal. So C plus O, these would be the reactants. Carbon dioxide is the product. So we have the reactants on the left and the products on the right. For making water, if we take 2 portions of hydrogen and 1 portion of oxygen, combine them together, we can make the product H2O. What we are looking at today is specifically these numbers out front. So the 2 here and the 2 here balances these out, and it gives us more of the story than just which reactants react together and what products are produced. So we have to look at the law of conservation of mass, and this is that it's never created or destroyed in a chemical reaction. Just like we conserve energy, we conserve mass. So the mass at the beginning has to be the same as at the end. Okay, so in balancing equations, the number of atoms should be the same on both sides of the arrow. So if you have hydrogen here and hydrogen here, you need to have 3 hydrogens here and 3 here. This number has to be the same. We cannot have 2 and 3 hydrogens. That's bad. Okay? So the mass of the reactants and the mass of the products have to be the same. Number of atoms on the left equal the number of atoms on the right. Balance. That's what we want here. We want things to be the same. Okay, so looking at your screen, you should have something set up similar to this. If not, maybe you might need to add in these little number or letters here. So the first step in balancing a reaction is to write down what atoms you have on each side. So we have nitrogen and hydrogen, so we write N and H, and nitrogen and hydrogen for the product side, so we write N and H there. I like to keep them in order, so I wrote N first on the top and then H is underneath. It just is easier as we go along. So first thing you do, just list the atoms, the elements that we're using. The next step is we count the atoms for each element on each side. So that's where this little 2 comes into play. We have 2 nitrogens here, so I write a 2 here. We have 2 hydrogens here, so I write a 2 for hydrogen there. We have no little number here, so that means we only have 1 nitrogen on the product side. And we have 3 hydrogens here, so we write a 3 on this side. So we just look at all of them. Then we're going to use what's called coefficients to make the numbers of atoms the same on each side. At first we need to figure out which ones are different. Well, you have 2 nitrogens in the reactant side and only 1 in the product side, so if we put a 2 here, that would be 1 times 2, it gives us 2. Now these nitrogens match up. But this 2 that we have up here is for both the N and the H. So we have to multiply our H by 2, and that gives us 6 H's on the product side. That's kind of a problem because we only have 2 on the reactant side. If we put a 3 here in front of the hydrogen, that would take this 2 times 3 equals 6. Now our hydrogens have matched up. Okay, so here it's just cleanly written out. If we put the 2 in front, it applies to both the N and the H, here and here. And then if we put a 3 here, we multiply by 3 and we get 6. And everything is balanced and beautiful, and you are finished.